Hi everyone, and welcome to another fantastic webinar from HRDQ-U. Today's webinar is titled Diversity Works, an interactive exploration into diversity awareness. My name is Asia, and I will be your host. The webinar will last about an hour, so we'll be moving pretty quickly to get everything in. Please make sure you have the handout for today. You'll find the download link in the Handouts tab on your dashboard. Also, we want your questions and comments during the webinar, so please feel free to type them into the chat box on your dashboard. Jillian and I will answer as many of your questions as we can during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. The questions that we cannot get to will be answered after the webinar and shared with you in an email next week. I am very excited to have Jillian Douglas here with us today. She is co-founder and chief learning officer at Idea Learning Group. With more than 20 years of experience in adult education, Jillian has a passion for conceptualizing and delivering operational, managerial, and leadership-focused employee development programs. In addition, she facilitates classroom learning and leads speaking engagements on a wide variety of topics related to adult learning and development. Jillian is also the co-author of the book, Let Them Choose, Cafeteria Learning Style for Adults. Today, Jillian is going to discuss with us her very popular diversity product, which is available in the HRDQ store called Diversity Works. It's an interactive, in-person workshop kit that very effectively brings awareness of diversity and inclusion concepts into your workplace. You are going to want to buy this kit after today's webinar, trust me. So stay tuned until the end because I will be giving you a very special discount offer on Diversity Works and the link to find the product in our store. So welcome, Jillian. Nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Asia. Good to be here.
Well, we are very excited to learn more about Diversity Works and how it will help bring diversity awareness into the workplace. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right.
All right, so we're going to talk about Diversity Works, and the concept here is choose, explore, engage. And the choose part, giving learners choice, is a really important part of the way that we designed this product. So it is very much about learner accountability, and that as a learning expert, as an instructional designer, is what I know really helps to fuel learning. So that's a big part of how this model was built. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I just want to give you an overview of what it is. And so very often people will say, Diversity Works, oh, that's that game. And yes, there is a game as one component, but it's much more than that. And it is a full 3-hour workshop, and it's learner-centered. So instead of this being about the facilitator providing the knowledge and everybody sitting passively and listening, this is about the learners participating and engaging. So it is learner-centered, which is really a hot trend in learning circles these days. It's an in-person workshop. This is not an online experience. It's fully in-person. And we're working at achieving diversity and inclusion awareness. So if you've got a diversity problem, or you've got a complaint, or even a lawsuit, we're hearing a lot about that in the news these days, this is not the product for that. But if you're looking to set a culture and create awareness, perhaps use this for something that you include in your onboarding, this is a really great tool to sort of say, we in our organization value diversity and inclusion, and so we want to make sure that everybody at least has a baseline understanding and can have communication in these 3 areas, which are understanding self, understanding others, and then communicating across differences. And through those 3 topics, we're exploring every facet of diversity and inclusion. So I'm going to show you how that's done in a few minutes here. All right, so like I said, this is not about the facilitator standing in front of the room with a PowerPoint where they're just describing concepts, or where they're saying, all right, let's all do this one activity now. And folks end up rolling their eyes, right? Because when I'm sure you have all been in a learning experience, a training session, where the facilitator says, okay, what we're going to do next is, and then they describe some activity that you just think, oh my goodness, this is going to be awful. I don't want to do it. And you spend your time thinking about how much you don't want to participate rather than thinking about the content. This takes that away. Here, the learner gets to choose. So the facilitator is really just providing the structure for the workshop. The learners are choosing from a variety of self-directed activities, and whatever they choose, they're still going to reach the same learning outcomes. That's how it's been designed. So it's really very much about the facilitator taking a backseat and the participant being the person driving their own learning experience. Whoops. There we go. So the first thing that we do as folks walk in, and you guys will probably have had this experience, you walk into a training or you're leading a training, and the first 5, maybe even 10 minutes is wasted. People are walking in, finding a seat, maybe they're coming in late, they spend the first few minutes looking at their phone, just sort of waiting for you to say, okay, let's get started, and it just kind of feels awkward. And so we've taken those first few minutes and integrated them into the content. So now with Diversity Works, when people arrive, they're either handed or they choose a seat where one of these, we call them face cards, is. And you can see that we're representing both diversity in age, in race, ethnicity, religious experience, anything that can be visually presented is in the variety of cards here. So everybody gets one of these cards, and the cards are double-sided. So here we would have perhaps received a card of Elena. And Elena, we know she's 48, she lives in Omaha, she owns a staffing agency. And so this is what's happening right as people arrive in the room. This is before the welcome, my name is Jillian, here's what we're going to do today. They walk in, great, hi, please sit down and fill in this card. So they answer these questions, things like, what kind of music does this person like? Do you trust them? How much education have they received? So this is an activity for them to do immediately. And of course, what this does is allow us to have a conversation about unconscious bias. So there are talking points in the facilitator guide that walk you through this, but instead of saying, unconscious bias is the tendency all humans have to, form judgments about, right? Instead of just describing it, and everybody in their head is thinking, yeah, but that's not me. We are exposing them and having them experience their own unconscious bias, which is a far more impactful experience. So really, if anybody has written anything, either positive or negative, they are demonstrating their unconscious bias. Really, the only potentially right answer is to just say, I don't know because I haven't met Elena, so I can't answer these questions. And I've never, in all the time we've been doing this, seen anybody do that. But we all, for good or for ill, have unconscious bias, and we all form impressions about people. All we're doing here is pointing that out and having them experience their own unconscious bias. So that's how we borrow back those first few minutes of the workshop. And after that, then we say, welcome. Hey, my name is Jillian. Welcome to the Diversity Works workshop. Thanks for participating in that activity. Today's workshop is a little bit different than what you normally experience. Let's go ahead and get started. So that's how we start the workshop. The next thing that we do is show them a little video, and this is just a screen grab from the opening scene of that video, and it's included in the kit on a USB stick. And this is just a 2-minute video that says, you might have noticed when you walked into the room, things look a little different, right? It's not rows of tables and chairs the way you would normally see. It's stations, there are activities, there are resources set up around the room. And don't worry, most people think, oh gosh, what am I going to have to do? Am I going to have to do something that makes me feel uncomfortable or is embarrassing? I don't want to do this. So this video is meant to set them at ease and say, it's okay. You're not going to be made to do anything you don't want to do. You're in control of your learning, and here's how it's going to work. So it's just a really quick video, just 2 minutes long, to give that overview. Once we've set their mind at ease, then we start walking through the detail of the workshop. And we hand out this thing that we call a menu, a learning menu. And you'll see those 3 tracks I mentioned earlier: understanding self, understanding others, and communication. And so each track has 3 activities, and these activities are set up around the room. So the facilitator would then walk to each station and just give a quick overview of how these activities work. You can see that there are icons there, either individual, pair, or small group. So for folks who really don't want to participate and work with others, they can choose an activity that is individual. Somebody who wants to work with others and likes a more collaborative experience can choose that also. So we say choose at least one activity from each track. So if you're going to be in the understanding self track, choose one of these. In the understanding others, choose one, and in the communication, choose one. Of course, you're going to choose one from each, so you're going to do a minimum of 3 activities. What we see, though, is that once people get started, they always complete more than 1 activity per track. But we just give them that as an opening, and that gives them kind of a sense of safety that, you know, okay, I can manage this. The other thing is these 9 activities are available simultaneously. And so it's not that you just go through, you know, Uniquely Me, and then you pause and wait and go through Stronger Together. You can do any one of these activities at any time, and you can spend as long or as little as you want at each activity. So once again, this is about giving the control back to the learner. They may walk to an activity, observe it, and decide they want to try it, or observe it and decide they don't want to try it. They could get started on something and realize it's not for them and try something else. But the idea is that they're choosing what makes them feel comfortable, and they're doing just 1 activity per track. So all 9 of these are set up in the room. You need obviously a space big enough to accommodate that, but not so big that it's cavernous. That can sometimes take the energy away from the experience. So let's go through this and see how it works in reality. We've got 3 participants, and so what I'm going to ask you to do is in the chat box, since this product is very much based on learner choice, and today you are the learners, I'd love to hear from you guys which participant we should start with, Jared, Shreya, or Daliana. So if you could go ahead and put that in the chat box, that would be super. All right, looks like it's a good split between Daliana and Shreya so far. I got a couple Jareds. All right, we're going to go with Shreya. That's what I'm seeing the most of. So let's take a look at Shreya. And I'm going to just click here on Shreya, and she's got this activity she wants to try called Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover. So, whoops. She's going to the wrong one. Asia, if you could get me back in. There we go. And we're gonna start with Jared. We're gonna go with Jared. I don't know what happened there. How funny. So Jared chose Who Am I? And what you see there on the left is the table tent. It's kind of the thing that you would see maybe in a restaurant, right? And it's got the specials or the desserts or drinks on it. And so you can see that he chose Who Am I from the menu, and he gets here and sees this tent card. It's got the name of the activity and just a brief description, and you can see that it's a pair activity. So he feels good that he's arrived in the right place. He flips over that top card and he gets this activity overview. And the activity overview is the same for each of the 3 activities in this track. So he's going to read through his activity overview, gives him just a little bit of content. And sometimes people will say, where's the give? Where's the lecture? Where's the content? Well, a big piece of it is in these activity overviews. So he's learning just a little bit about the Wheel of Diversity here. He flips that over and he gets to the instructions. And in the instructions, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to go through those instructions, and let's take a look at what this looks like as he participates. There we go. So he's paired up with Anita. So Anita starts off, and she's got this wheel of diversity, and from each of these concentric circles, she's going to choose something to say. And she needs to go for about a minute. So it's quite a long time. And she's going to say, who am I? And then she's going to answer the question. Repeat, who am I? And answer the question. And she's going to do this until she runs out of things to say. And what you'll notice is that most people start describing themselves in terms that that are easy, right? In terms of your role in the workplace, maybe your role in a family. So she says, I'm a physician. Who am I? I am a mother. Who am I? I am a Black woman. And then as people start to warm up, they make there's this decision point where they decide, oh, well, I could say this, but do I feel comfortable? Do I want to share that much information? And so, you know, she's decided here she's going to share that she's a Christian, she's a history buff, she's a descendant of American slaves. And so these are the things that she's choosing to share with Jared. So she goes through her list, and then it's Jared's turn. And he says, who am I? I am a husband. I am a father. He talks about his work. He talks about he's a UGA Bulldogs fan. He also shares that he's a Christian, and then he realizes, ooh, this is hard, right? So he's pausing midway through as he's trying to think about what to say. Now, as he's talking, his partner, Anita, is really just witnessing. She's not sharing anything else. She's not jumping in and saying, oh, tell me more about that. She's just listening. So the last thing that he chooses to share is, I am the parent of a gay daughter. So they've each shared, and the card then directs them to a debrief. But often what happens is, you know, they get to the debrief, the questions that are there. Question 5, what was it like when you were the speaker? What was it like to be the witness? How did you choose what to share and what not to share? And they will have that conversation, but prior to that, they're going to have a more organic human conversation, right? That's not been prescribed for them. And so, you know, she says it was easy, it got harder. He realizes, yeah, I had to really think about what I wanted to share. And she says, you know, hey, we've got a few things in common, our faith, and you like to fish, my dad likes to fish. And then he says, well, I've never shared what I said about my daughter with somebody I didn't know before. That must have been really hard. It was, but I love her. She's a great kid. So they're having a real human conversation here. And time and again, that's what we find, is that people, given the power to be in charge of their own learning, are having conversations that we might not ever imagine we should ask them. You know, share something personal that you've never told anybody before. If we had directed that, of course he wouldn't have felt comfortable. But because of the framework, he felt like that was something that he was willing and able to share, and she was receptive to it. So this works really well. This is one of the activities. Now, of course, you can see over on the right, part of the instructions, number 5 and number 6, we have some additional things that we want them to discuss, and they will get to that. All right, so let's go back to our participants here. Let's try Daliana and case by case. She's choosing Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover, and once again she arrives at the table. She's got the instructions right there. She reads the overview. She works through the instructions. And she's got 5 books here. So this is Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover, and so she's presented with 5 stories, 5 storybooks. So she's going to choose one of these books, and we're going to explore employee A. And so as she opens it up, it tells her the story is of an employee at a fictitious company, and you need to read through this book to learn about them. So she turns the page. And I seem to be getting sometimes my page is going and sometimes it's not. Asia, can you, there we go. So fact number 1. So again, you can see we're returning to this wheel of diversity. The wheel, by the way, is a pretty standard D&I tool, and it's used with permission from SHRM, the Society for HR Management. So here you can see that we've highlighted management status in the organizational dimension. And so the fact that relates to that about this employee is, I work as a senior manager. Fact number 2, whoops, I've worked in the industry for 10 years, so they're choosing seniority. And it says at this point, pause, okay? And with your partner, discuss your impressions of me so far. So Shreya is saying, I have a pretty different experience from people who work in management, but I've seen plenty of patients with high-stress jobs that sometimes create chronic health issues. And Alex, the person she's partnered with, says, my experience with management is pretty varied. I've had some good managers, some not so good managers. The further up the food chain, the less likely they are to know what's really going on. So they don't have a lot of information on this person yet, but they're discussing their impressions so far. They learn a little bit more that this person grew up in North Dakota and that their husband and they divorced 3 years ago. So you can see we've moved into the external dimension. And once again, now we're saying pause and discuss. Okay, so she's going to summarize. She says, okay, so this person is a divorced senior manager with lots of experience. They live in North Dakota. I guess I don't know much about North Dakota, but divorce might lead to stress. Just like that management job. So because she's a physician, she's filtering this through her perspective. And Alex says, yeah, there's not a lot to go on. I'm pretty good at reading people. You know, I'm always trying to identify potential shoplifters, but reading these facts isn't terribly useful for me at this point. So they're going to go back in and they're going to learn a little bit more. So this is the way the book works. You read a little, you pause and discuss. You read a little, and then you pause and discuss again. Here we see that the ethnicity, the father is half Native American, and this person went to college on a softball scholarship. And then the last page we get to is the reveal. So this person says, my name is Shirin. She reveals a little bit more about herself. Her father is half Native American. Her mother is Persian. She's Muslim. She likes to volunteer in after-school programs with her daughter. So she gives us a little background and then says, am I who you thought you would meet? So the questions there are, how could you make a personal connection and what could you learn from Shirin? And what we find time and again is people stop and go, oh, that's not the kind of person I had in my head. So let's keep moving on. This is their debrief, right? Shreya says, wow, I didn't see that coming. I figured out it was a woman. I guess I hadn't thought of a Muslim woman being divorced, not wearing a head covering. Maybe I need to learn something. And Alex, right, he's got his own perspective. She seems like she might feel misunderstood, as he sometimes does. So now they're able to relate this person back to their own experiences. And let's do our, let's see if that one, looks like our links, here we go, case by case. This is the last of the 3 activities that we're going to show for now. This once again begins with the flip cards, the instructions. You read the overview and you are given the instructions. So the way that this one works is we've got some cases, some case studies here, and you read through your scenario and answer the questions. Now this one is a true story. In what we've got, and I guess we can't see it quite the way this slide has come through, but we were going to look at scenario 2, and in scenario 2, a woman has returned from maternity leave, and as she returns to the office, she's in an outside of work get-together with her coworkers. One of her coworkers' wives says, "When is your husband going to get a better job so that you don't have to work?" And this is a true story. This is something that happened to somebody that we know here in our office. And so all these scenarios are either taken from news or from our own personal experiences. So what is it that you should do when you hear something like this? So Daliana, her response is, "This is crazy, that's ridiculous, it's nobody's business. I would just quit." And so you can see Daliana's response is quite emotional. And she's paired up with Pete here, and he says, "Well, I can see why you might be a bit upset, but hey, nothing wrong with good old-fashioned family values." You've got to be kidding me. I don't think I could tolerate being around people like this. And Pete says, "Well, it's a good thing you aren't in your shoes. I guess she just is going to have to decide what she wants to do here. Should she just quit or speak up? What should she do?" And Daliana, well, of course she's got to say something. She's upset and this is just going to get worse. So what should she say? Right? So she decides, nope, he loves his job and so do I. We're happy with our situation. Right? So Pete realizes that the areas on the diversity wheel, so now he's moving into answering the question that was in the instructions. What areas of the diversity wheel are represented here? And he says parental status, marital status, religion, and spirituality. And Daliana rightly points out that gender is also represented because nobody would have ever made that comment to her husband. Right? So the last question in the instructions asked how we can apply this to the workplace. And so she's realizing that maybe she could hold her tongue a little bit when she strongly disagrees with somebody. There isn't necessarily a need for an angry response. And Pete says, yeah, and maybe I could see that things have changed a little bit since I first started working. So these are the kinds of ways that people are interacting with these activities. Now I can see that somebody, John, you're asking about, can we talk about an activity where somebody chooses to work alone? Yeah, let's go back to, and I don't have slides prepared for that, but let's just go back to our menu, if you guys will bear with me for a moment here. There we go. So uniquely me. We're going to show you, I think, an image of that a little bit later, not go through the details of that. But that's a really cool activity where, once again, we're presenting the wheel of diversity and providing an opportunity for people to answer some questions that represent how they see themselves, and then to draw a visual representation of that. So this is an example of an activity that, you know, for me, I'm not going to draw, and I'm certainly not going to draw in public. If a facilitator had said to me that I needed to do that activity, I would just emotionally shut down because I would be embarrassed. I don't draw well, and I don't want to expose myself to ridicule. But I don't have to choose that activity. On the other hand, folks who do enjoy expressing themselves in that way, we get a lot of people participating in that activity, and you'll be able to see how that works in a minute. Telling my story is another activity that works really well. alone. And in telling my story, we provide some story prompts, things that we ask people to then record their own stories. So the only component that's not provided in the kit is some sort of audio recording device, which you can do with any kind of smartphone app. And we ask people to answer questions like, describe a special holiday or tradition that is celebrated in your family, or discuss a time that you witnessed somebody else's hostility towards a member of a minority group. So there's about 6 questions, and we ask people to just record their story. And I'm sure you guys have all seen trainers bringing in, say, movie clips or something from a little YouTube to tell a story, and use that storytelling as a really powerful tool for creating an emotional response in the learning environment. It really works well. However, when you pull in a clip from a Hollywood film, we know that it's a Hollywood film, and it doesn't, we're disconnected from it to some degree. But when you hear the story of one of your coworkers or one of your peers, that connects for people in a very visceral way. And so so we find that works really well. We often will seed those stories so that people, if they don't want to share a story, can just sit down and listen to a story that's already been presented from one of the facilitators. So I'm going to, because we moved through our slides and we went back, I'm just going to jump to where we were. And I'm going to bring you here. And because we know that there are right and wrong, yes and no components to this diversity conversation, it's not all, it depends, or it's your opinion, or it's your perspective, as we saw in those activities just a few moments ago. Because we know that there are actual facts that you need to understand. After that free range learning where people are choice based, we bring them to a board game that we call the Journey of Diversity. And in small groups, folks take turns pulling a card, reading it aloud, and answering the question. So if you get the answer correct, you get to roll the die and move your pawn. And if you don't get the answer correct, you just don't move your pawn. So some questions here. We have, what is the most common male name in the world? And the choices are John, Mohammed, Jose, and Zhang Wei. So if you guys could put in the chat box what you think the answer is, A, B, C, or D would suffice rather than typing in the whole name. That would be super. So we've got a variety of answers. Not a lot of people with A. I see B's and D's. And yeah, Mohammed, answer B is indeed correct. So what we find, though, with the participants who work through this is that most people do choose John, and it's likely because they know a fair number of Johns. And so that then provides an opportunity for them at their table as they're working through this game to have a conversation about, gosh, if the answer is Mohammed and I don't know many or any Mohammeds, how is that, right? And so that is an interesting conversation that begins at that table. So there's a variety of questions here. The one that I just read to you, there's also to the left of that, a smile can have different cultural meanings, true or false. So perhaps a little bit simpler. And then some that are perhaps more of a mini case study. The one that you see on the bottom right is a story from the actual news where a woman is wearing religious headwear for her first day of work, and the security guard who's taking her badge picture asks her to remove it, which of course she can't do. And so how is that situation resolved. So this component of the game is meant of the workshop is meant to bring in the actual fact-based content. So this is really part 2. All right. So there's a significant debrief, and I want to walk through that at the after each topic, before the board game, but after you've gone through each of those 3 topics, understanding self, others, and respecting differences, and you've gone through those activities, the facilitator leads a debrief. And this isn't, which activity did you like the best? You know, this is, okay, let's look at those 3 activities around understanding self. What did you learn? What were some of the common takeaways? How did this work? And so we do that with understanding self, others, and through respecting differences. You can see that the facilitator guide has a timestamp in the top right, so it's really telling you exactly how much time you should spend on each page of the facilitator guide. It's got the notes on the left and shows you a visual of the slide that you might be showing on the right. It works really, really simply. The facilitator's job is honestly to open the workshop, to do some debriefing, to keep things moving, to answer questions, but it's not about delivering the content. We also have a simple evaluation, both a pre-evaluation and a post-evaluation that's included. And this is an overview of the workshop again. It comes with a setup guide, so when you open the box, it tells you right on top everything that should be in the box. It's got all the kit contents. Everything's in envelopes, so there's lots of moving parts, and all those moving parts are labeled and separated into envelopes, so it makes it really easy to both set up and take apart. It's got the facilitator guide with the talking points, the USB stick with the video and the slides, and like I said, each of those envelopes that explains exactly how to set up the room. And this gets back to that first activity that we showed about the individuals. And so this is an example of people are working on this individually. Now, there are several people there working at a time, but they're working on this individually. And this is an image from one of our workshops that we ran, and I love this quote. So we're doing an activity. One person shared a stereotype about their Mormon faith, another shared about their Jewish faith. And that's a conversation that I think is remarkable. If a facilitator had said, I want you to turn to the person next to you and share some common misconceptions about your religion, that would kind of be like throwing a grenade into the room. It would just really potentially open up some very difficult conversations. But these two folks are choosing to have that conversation because they are empowered through the structure of the workshop. This is an image from that activity where we're telling my story. So this is a gal who is either perhaps listening to a story that somebody has already recorded, or she may be recording her own story and reflecting on what she's about to say. And again, folks, this is resonating with folks. They realize that it's showing how they're unique and that they're very similar, and that they're enjoying that they're learning from each other rather than a rote presentation. This is, sorry, we'll go back one slide. This is an example of the Communicate with Care activity, and this was folks partnering. They've got a large poster, they roll a die, and then they're answering questions about how they would react and how they might actually respond, and the difference between the appropriate reaction, the gut reaction and the appropriate response. And so you can see that this is a highly experiential workshop where folks are connected with each other and really connected with the content. All right, Asia.
Thanks, Jillian. It was great to learn all about that product. So thank you for that detailed explanation and walking us through it. It was good. So it's almost time for Q&A. We have some good questions that are coming in. Thank you to all of those that have been, putting in your questions, but keep them coming. We're going to go ahead and answer as many as we can. But before we start answering those, let me go ahead and share with you the offer that you get for joining us today. So I'm sure you all found the Diversity Workshop Kit as interesting as I did, and will want to try it immediately in your organization or with your clients. So our special offer for attendees only is a 25% discount off the workshop kit. That includes everything you need: a setup guide, the facilitator's guide, and the activity and participant materials, all in one convenient box. So that's enough materials for up to 25 participants. The retail price is $1,999, so you'll save almost $500 with this special offer. As with all the products you will find in the HRDQ store, Diversity Works comes with a 30-day, no questions, money-back guarantee. So if it doesn't work for you, you can send it back for a full refund. But please remember, this offer is only good for 2 weeks. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to call our customer service team. You'll find, you should be able to see a new handout in the dashboard with all the details about our special offer. If you do not get it today, we'll go ahead and send it via email so you won't miss out. It includes the coupon code and the link to the Diversity Works in the HRDQ store. So make sure to get that now, or again, look for it in your email. So now, Diversity Works includes the facilitation instructions. However, if you are interested in a custom version, or if you want to work with Jillian's organization to deliver the product for you, just give us a call and we'll be happy to provide you with a proposal from our professional services group. So, okay, we have some questions coming in. Jillian, do you see them?
I do.
All right, you want to go ahead and grab one?
Sure. So we'll start with some of the more generic ones. What is the ideal group size for a workshop like this? The workshop is meant to work for a group of about 25 people. So there are materials in that kit for 25 people. I wouldn't recommend having fewer than maybe 15, because obviously you need the number of people in the room to share and interact with each other. So 15 to 25 is ideal. And then each refill kit serves another 25. So as you saw, that there are many consumable components to the kit. And so rather than buy a new full kit, you just need to buy a refill kit in the training materials. Yeah, you saw today, all the examples that I shared are all included. So what's your experience like using this with a very heterogeneous group? Well, I think that a group of, 60 plus white male senior partners, you're not going to have the same experience as if you had, a more age, gender, racially diverse group. These guys probably have a fair amount in common, but they don't have everything in common. And they may find that there are some startling things that they learn about each other. They also are going to be learning not just from each other and reflecting on themselves, but they're going to be participating in the board game and learning some of that fact-based content there as well. So while I think it's ideal if you've got a little bit of a mixed group, I think that you're still going to get some benefit by doing this with a heterogeneous group. Certainly, I think more bang for your buck than bringing in a professional diversity speaker and where we're just sitting and listening to somebody who may be a dynamic facilitator, but doesn't doesn't have us doing the work, right? It's us hearing their story, which I think is a feel good in the moment, but not necessarily really hands-on, which I certainly prefer. Yeah, so do you sell replacement parts? And so like I said, there are refill kits, and those refill kits I think are $500. So everything that you need is in there. Let's see. Do you know who the protagonist is when you hear their story, i.e. you are listening to the story of someone in the workshop? So if you're thinking, John, there about the Telling My Story app, that's entirely up to the person who records if they choose to disclose their name, or they could just be recording their voice. With that Telling My Story activity, we always ask people at the end of the workshop if they would like to have their story removed, and they can just sort of watch us swipe and delete it, or if they feel comfortable leaving it, you as a facilitator then can really build up kind of a bank of stories over time, so that when you run the session, 6 months from now, you've got maybe 10 stories that are already preloaded, and that can be really useful. Is there outcome research published? No, I'm sorry, Cynthia, there is not. We have not been able to pursue something like that at this time. And how many different professional development sessions could a person expect to deliver to participants? I'm not sure I understand the question, but the kit itself serves one group of up to 25 folks, and then you would purchase the refill kits. So you could facilitate that as many times as you wanted with refill kits. So I think there's a question here. Do individuals share back the activities that they do independently? Yes, they would do that. If you're doing an independent activity, all the activities have embedded within them some questions at the end, which if you're working with somebody else would be a discussion question, and if you're working alone, it would be a reflection question. But at the end, when we have completed all those activities, just prior to moving to the board game, the facilitator is leading a debrief. And so at that point, those who participated in individual activities would have an opportunity to share their thoughts and their experiences if they so choose, right? Some folks may just feel very, they may be shy, they could be introverted, and really prefer to learn in a more reflective way rather than in a collaborative way. So I think those are the questions.
I have a question, Jillian.
Yeah.
So diversity, it can be a touchy subject sometimes, and to one person, something that they say might not be inappropriate to them, but it might be very inappropriate and sensitive to another person. So what happens if somebody says something inappropriate? Right.
Well, and we have seen that from time to time. It's interesting, each time that has happened, and as a facilitator, I am walking the room and looking and listening for those things. Obviously, I'm not going to catch everything, but what I do see is because the participants have been given control of their own learning, they tend to speak up and say something immediately. And I've heard people say, I'm sorry, that makes me uncomfortable, or that's not appropriate, or I've seen 2 or 3 people say, you can't say that here, that's not cool. And so participants, it's not a passive experience, it's a very, very different kind of learning experience where they are taking accountability for their own learning. And so, that's been my experience.
Mm-hmm. And then we have another one. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Paul asked, did you talk about how long this full content is? How long does the class last?
Yeah, it's designed to be a 3-hour workshop, and that's from beginning to end. We have occasionally had folks say, well, gosh, I don't have 3 hours. That's tough for me. And we have seen it successfully used where people will break it maybe into 2 parts and do the choice-based, activity-based learning on one day, and then do the board game and some of the other components on another day. So that's an option. Of course, we designed it to all fit together, but the reality of life means that sometimes that's not necessarily going to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Those were all insightful questions, but I think that's all we have that came through. So I think, I think we tackled all the topics, and we really did a good explanation of this game. So if there's any questions that are left over, you can contact HRDQ customer service or Jillian, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you. So thank you, Jillian. It was a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to everyone who joined us. We appreciate your time, and we hope you found today's webinar very informative. Don't forget to take advantage of the special offer on Diversity Works. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Wednesday for our next webinar titled Leading a Remote Team, Rally Your Virtual Team to Optimal Efficiency and Productivity. Bye, everyone.